Three, two, one. Jay Shrek, what's going on today? Where are we at? We're in Finney Strong, a spiritual solution to a world in crisis. And I'm here today with Mr. C.H. Smith. We're going to bring him in and get this party started immediately, if not sooner. Let's get him in the line. There he goes. Let's get him. Let's add it. There he goes, right there. Crank it up, Charlie. Crank it up.
We're cranking it up today, Jay Shrek. We're cranking it up.
That is awesome. What's your day look like today, Charlie?
So today is looking like another exciting day. And as you know, this is a beautiful time in the great state of Arizona.
90 degrees yesterday. I couldn't believe that. I was like, oh my gosh, did I miss the winter? Did I miss it? Because it won't be long that it will be 109 degrees. So are you ready to go? Are you ready for the heat?
I am ready. You know, I love when it gets hot. And, you know, I love running and riding, and I'm thinking I'm ready this year. I'm feeling good. Feeling really
High
good.
Heat Training Club is ready to go.
You remember those days? You remember those days?
Speaking of high heat, we talk about situations that happen in our life, and a lot of times these situations happen when we're quite young, and sometimes we have these revelations, if you want to call it that. And I was informed that you had a revelation at one time about your past history, and I do believe everybody has this if they'll look, right? And tell me a little bit about a revelation that you had.
Okay, so we're going to get right into this. So here we go. We're taking the gloves off on this one, Jay Shrek. So I woke up about 2 weeks ago, and I actually admitted to myself that I'm dyslexic, and it was like a game changer just coming to that conclusion. How it worked out is I was in the shower and I was listening to somebody that I think is a big thought leader and business leader, Alex Karp. He just launched a book, and he was talking about his dyslexia, and this is crazy, Jeff. And it's a struggle I've had, and we'll get into that in a second. But all of a sudden, it was like I heard that word, and I was like, I'm dyslexic. Now, I learned that I was dyslexic when I was in second grade. My wife didn't even know this, so I walked in the next room and saw her. We were getting ready to go see my son in Austin, and so I had this epiphany as you're trying to get ready to go to the airport and stuff. And I told my wife, I was like, "Hey, I'm dyslexic." And then we had a conversation there about it. And where it really hit home is on the flight to Austin. My son was running in a marathon there. I was watching YouTube, and I had saved some YouTubes about dyslexia. I just boom, 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 saved them. And I'm watching, and you know that TED Talks where they have like 8 minutes? And so I saved this TED Talks, and then I'm watching the TED Talks about dyslexia, and then I made the unfortunate or fortunate when you're flying in an airplane of looking in the comments, and I saw people sharing a lot of pain that I have experienced in my life. I'm 56 now. So you can get the time frame where I've just like packed this thing away and didn't think about it. And then I just start bawling. And then my wife looks over.
You're on the plane, right? So
on the plane.
Okay.
I am bawling. And just because when you're reading some of these comments, and I don't know if you ever went down and read comments to things, and I was reading these comments, and the comments were feeling the pain that I have felt in my life, And that's why I just started bawling. And it was like uh, it's like freedom. I don't know how to explain it. It was like a big weight lifted, that all of a sudden I admitted that I had this, and this is what has caused a lot of the other. The pain wasn't from the dyslexia. It what happened to me when I was young, in the 1970s. It caused the pain, and
So
that's
take
why.
me back, if you would, to your childhood, to where you first, experienced that, and how'd that play out? How'd that play out in your life, where you first became associated with the fact that you had it, even though it, as a kid, where did it start? Where did you go? What happened?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thanks, Jeff. I grew up in the 70s. I was born late 60s, grew up in the 70s, and that was a crazy time. Whether it was fortunate or unfortunate in this story is I grew up in Fairfax County, which is one of the richest counties in the United States at that time. I think it still is. It's just outside of DC. And when I was in second grade, they diagnosed I was a slow learner. So I don't necessarily know if we want to do a deep dive in what dyslexia is, but you look at the world differently, you see things differently. Um, and so I was diagnosed that. They immediately put me in a learning disability class, otherwise known as LD class. I don't know if they still call it today. The, looking back, I think if they would have, if I was in a smaller school district or a small town, they would have maybe just held me back or just kept me where I was. But when you have money and choices in education, and in the 70s where they don't, it was crazy time then. They just didn't have all the science and data that they have today about how to deal with different personality types. And this is not a personality type. Let's call it, dyslexic ability or disability. Now, a lot of people think it's a superpower, but yeah, I got put in a learning disability class, an LD class, and that changed my life, quite frankly.
Well, when you say it changed your, so how when you're in that environment, is it looked down upon with the rest of the students?
I growing up, you know how difficult elementary school, middle school, high school can be. If you all of a sudden are taking out of what's considered the normal population and set aside, and then that room, the LD room in the 70s, was not just people with dyslexia, or I don't even know if there was people with dyslexia, behavior issues, every type of anything that could lead to learning disabilities. I mean, I remember kids throwing desks around, screaming, hollering, all sorts of crazy stuff. And that was kind of the environment that I grew up in. And like when there's a kid screaming in a room, and then and you're in kind of like a pod or whatever in your grade, right? The rest of everybody else. So now you're identified with having a learning disability, and it's just weird. I have actually struggled with this. I've had a lot of shame, and I think part of that crying was just dealing with the shame that I've had growing up. Now there is some positives to this story, um, but which started when I was in fourth grade. But that's kind of teeing it up without crying and stuff. I'm glad I got through this, and I'm 2 weeks into
I'm
this.
not trying to make you go back completely, but I do want to dig a little deeper, because I think one of the things you mentioned that a lot of people deal with as adults, that's what's funny about this. It's not, things that happen in our childhood come back and haunt us in our adult lives. And sometimes when you're 60, 70, 80, you have these feelings of things that happened when you were a kid that never got either dealt with. Tell me about the shame a little bit. What do you think where do you think that shame manifested? What do you think that was, the shame part of having to go into that LD room?
Well, it's the shame of not being normal like everybody else. Even when you think you're normal. You know what I'm saying? Like I wasn't a kid throwing the desk and screaming and stuff. I was more of, a handful of people in there that are star peoples just doing their work, and then there's chaos in the room. But people look at you differently. Uh, I have a lot of sympathy for people now going through this experience, that now that just looking at this dyslexia and in the pain and suffering once I was put into the LD room. So it's not the dyslexia. It was the fact of being separated from society. So I feel, especially when you're younger, I felt that. I wore that. So I have a lot of, you know, people that may be doing stuff. Back in the day, it was like color your hair and wear all black, in high school or something to be different. I wasn't trying to be different. I was set aside to be different. I think that's different. You know what I mean?
So I know you had a transition from like second grade to fourth grade. What was that transition when you actually, after 2 years of dealing with this, what happened then?
Okay, so this is a weird part of the story. So in fourth grade, my elementary school, our thing was playing chess. It was like, elementary schools, they have their thing. Maybe one is reading, ours was playing chess. So it was like, and we had a big chess tournament at the end of the year. And a lot of times in recreation, you would play chess. And so I had this talent. So in fourth grade, all of a sudden, okay, I'm developing this talent. And then by the time I was in fifth grade, they're like, okay, this kid's this kid's pretty good. I don't know if I won the school championship, but I was pretty darn close to winning, if not winning that in fifth grade. And then by the time I got to sixth grade, I was unstoppable. Like there was nobody, no teacher, nobody in the school could beat me. I don't think I lost once that year until I went to regionals. And I went to regionals. I placed third place there. It was kind of funky. I placed third because I lost to the guy who won it. I later beat him in a school to school chess tournament. So just to set the record straight.
Just to
Yeah,
nudge a
yeah,
little
yeah, yeah,
bit.
yeah, yeah. And then I went to states, and then I placed like 10th place. I think I could have done better, but I had poison oak, so I had one, and I was allergic. Literally half my face, I was like a cyclops. It was puffed up. I could only see out of one eye, and obviously that makes sense when you're playing chess. And then my whole arm was ballooned up. So don't get. I can't get near poison oak. That's like, poison ivy is one thing, but oak will blow me up. So I placed 10th place there, and it was a good run. And then I stopped playing chess competitively after that. I just got this syndrome, like I didn't want to lose to anybody.
Well, did it help? Do you think that helped though for you to focus on something that built your self-esteem, that got you looked at maybe differently than you did when you were, just in that class, that all of a sudden you elevated yourself personally outside of that? Do you think that definitely helped your self-esteem?
So that's a really good question. I've never thought about that. Um, all I can tell you is I always really like sports and competition. And because I felt like it put me on the equal playing field. And being somebody that's, not on the same playing field as everybody, let's say academically in different classroom. Um, I guess I really enjoyed that side of it. I don't recall that as far as chess, but I do recall that as far as athletics. I really enjoyed competition. I really enjoyed um, being just like everybody else.
So, the amazing thing about the story is that and I want to fast forward, right? Because if somebody, I've known you 20 years, and if somebody would ask me about a successful guy, seriously, that I would say that you are a successful person. And I've told people that there are the other people in my life that you don't know, that know we have a relationship, uh, that you're very successful. And I never would have thought that you would have had this traumatic experience. I would have never known that. But you know what you bring, that why it's important to me is that I believe everybody has something in them. And here you are, a guy that past 50 learns this, right? Learns this about
Mm.
himself. And so you've taken that, if you want to call it a disability, and you have turned that into something that has it's definitely been a fire to drive in your life. And I'm pretty impressed with the fact, it's not easy to look back in ourselves. It's not easy to look back on that stuff. And that's I've experienced this with other people as well, where you think when you get to be 60 or 70 that you don't have these feelings of what would have happened maybe as a child, regardless of what that might be, whatever trauma that you might be involved in. But it never goes away until you talk about it. It never goes away until you look at it. It never, that pain is there for a long, long time. And I applaud the strength it is to be able to feel. I applaud the strength to be able to go back and look at that stuff and deal with that stuff, because a lot of it too can be turned into positives. Like you definitely have lived a great life, and you didn't let that bring you down, but it doesn't mean it wasn't brewing in there. You know what I'm saying?
No, I always so I always felt like I had a chip on my shoulder, and people who maybe, and I'm a first generation college student, so that's not why I had a chip on my shoulder. I felt like I had a chip on my shoulder because I felt like I didn't have a fair take, and I was separated from all my friends. I mean, we even talk about this. Like, I kind of grew up right next to my elementary school. Matter of fact, they changed the school district, and my parents moved right next to the elementary school because they thought it was important that I would stay in this program because they were sold, and maybe it was the right thing. I don't want to say that. Like, first off, I don't blame my parents at all. They're only doing what the professionals tell them to do. There was no internet, no cell phones. There was no information. So back then, you just relied on subject matter experts. Now, now you have AI. You have all this information to go to. So when somebody in the 1970s says, "Hey, your kid has a learning disability, he's learning slow," and then before you know it, they throw them we need to put him in a learning disability class, right? When you do that, it's not just the academic side, it's the whole social side. Like, I lived a stone's throw from my elementary school. All my friends I grew up with, like, they're all on that same street. You get the vibe,
Right,
even though
right,
it's a
exactly.
big city. I mean, this is the community I grew up with, and now I'm the kid that is being separated from all his friends. Like, I don't even think I ever dealt with that. I don't. I'm sure I was teased. Um, I'm sure that I set that aside. It's. I'm sure I was teased, and I'm sure that pain. Right. I have totally disregarded that, meaning I don't remember the experiences. But the reality is that's kind of happened. Matter of fact, I remember one of my, like, we're talking, if you stuttered, right, you would be put in an LD class,
Right.
right? It's just like, just throw them all in there, and then we'll figure it out later because they're learning slower. Yeah, that's tough. I still have these relationships with my friends I grew up with from elementary school, middle school, high school. Man, it would be interesting to ask them, but I don't even think I could deal with the pain of just saying, "Hey, what did you think about me back then?" This is like a lot of self-reflection I'm having right now.
Well, the thing that I go back to is I don't think there's anybody that hasn't felt shame to some degree. that we haven't done things or be in situations that we carry the shame. I look at it like this, Charlie, like you're carrying a backpack, right? You got this backpack and you've got all these things in that backpack. You've got shame and all these bad feelings that you carry through your life. And I don't even know sometimes if you even know that you're carrying them, right? And you don't know that until you release them, until you have the situation or scenario that all of a sudden you realize that, you don't have to carry this pain or this burden anymore. And I think that's what's really important about what we're talking about. Is first off is your honesty to be able to come on here and be able to talk about situations that was extremely painful. And then the second thing is that the hope is that, you don't have to carry this pain anymore. Right. You can take that backpack off and you can dump it back out. And, it doesn't mean that we may not pick it back up somewhere down the road and stuck it back in there. But knowing that at any time that God's grace can remove that shame from us, because that's what's important about it is going back and looking at it, but realizing that, we don't have to live like that. I've dealt with a lot of people that have had childhood trauma, and the thing that I tell them also is that the hard love part of this is there's a point in your life where, regardless of how bad your life was, you have to let it go, and you got to give it to God, regardless, because some of these people that may have had scenarios or situations are not going to be able or to say they're sorry or whatever it might be. But you have to forgive yourself. You have to ask God's forgiveness, and he will forgive you. And you don't have to carry this burden of shame. And I feel for everybody out there, regardless of what that situation is, of anybody that feels different out there. I think we've all felt on the outside. And to have somewhere, where can I go to feel like I'm a part of today? And that's what's important about, I think, what you're trying to build in your channel is you're trying to build a place where people can come to that can feel like they're a part of something. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, that's a great piece. I do want to bolt onto my story. So okay, I finished out as chess champion in elementary school, only to be bussed across town to a middle school, which, by the way, my high school and middle school were kind of right in the same zone as my elementary school in my local community. So then they bussed me across town for 7th and 8th grade, and to go to a place where there's a specialty LD. I got basically straight A's. And so looking back, once you get put in a system like that, I think it's almost near impossible to get out, if you know what I mean. I don't know. As I look back, like, am I just a number? Like, how did they force rank me? Right? Is there a way to get out of the system? Because I didn't know anybody that got out of the system. And then after being bussed again, my friends are walking to middle school. Then I went to my high school. By the time it was my senior year, I had one LD class, and it was English. So it's kind of this working my way out based on my skill strength. But if you I was dyslexic, so I was really strong in math, and obviously really strong in strategy from chess. And I think if I was I think things would be a lot different if I wasn't put in that scenario. But I don't think God did that for a reason to me. Would I have had more opportunities? Maybe run a business or something like that. Start a business. Who knows? But certainly my path has been I've had a good life. I don't want to shine this, but the fact is weird that I would carry this and then all of a sudden hear that word and then go through this at the age of 56 when I found out there was two. Now, my wife, KS, she asked me, she said, did you did you forget that you had dyslexia? What's the point of that? Like, and I get why she's asking that question. And for me, and maybe other people that experience stuff at a young age, it wasn't dyslexia. It was the fact all I could feel is the shame from being put in an LD class and being separated from the general population, let's call it. And that alone, you talk about backpack, took the whole dyslexic thing, which I remember back in the 70s, like you read letters backwards, and it was something like
Exactly.
that.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like everybody says that. It's like the 70s thing. Now they have now there's all sorts of other stuff. But I will say, because of that, dyslexia, if you look at, how dyslexics think, a lot of people overcompensate. A lot of dyslexics may develop verbal communication, which, I've been in sales and marketing the majority of my life. And I knew for me to succeed, that I would have to win in verbal communication. Not that I did this intentionally, but looking back, that's why I developed that strength, because I knew what my weaknesses are and I needed to focus on my strength. This is subconsciously. Nobody told me to do this.
I was just thinking about, like what you said. It's not the scenario sometimes, but the shame that's caused. It's the byproduct of whatever the situation or scenario it was. It wasn't the dyslexia that caused you the shame. It was the situation and scenario around having it that put you into place at that time. And it does make me feel for people that don't feel right inside. They don't feel right. I mean, and I feel for all of them. I really do. And we all have something. I believe that we all been gifted something to have to deal with. And it's not easy, but I have to look at myself, and I have to know, again, we're at the 3-minute mark till we're done. So as we wrap this up, we go into the 3-minute clock turns on, click it on. So what is the solution to someone in the scenario or situation that you've got, as far as where does the solution of God come into your story, Charlie?
Well, so that's a great question. Here's how I look at it. If you read the Old and New Testament, God has done amazing things with ordinary people. These weren't necessarily like David conquered Goliath. He was small. The stories are on and on and on. Moses, was stuttered. And God just looks for people that want to honor him and are committed to be a part of his family. And I think through the pain that I have, not saying I'm a Moses, I think I have a different relationship with God. And that relationship started at a young age, and I didn't really know what that was, because my story doesn't end there. It's a roller coaster. My story is probably like a lot of people. It's a roller coaster of emotions, and a lot of these things in my life, like, I didn't generate them. It was something that was generated towards me. Like, I didn't do something to cause the issue. And I think when you are constantly getting hit over the head every 5 years or whatever it is, you build this you rely on God first off, because there's nothing else to rely on.
Right.
And then yeah, that's how I would say. I feel like I have a deep faith in God, that God will be there no matter what happens. And so relationship with God doesn't happen overnight. Yes, you can confess your sins and Jesus, your Lord. And I get it that you died on the cross for my sins and rose the next day. And this is a part of the Trinity and how history works in for humanity and our planet. But for me, that personal relationship has been a relationship of being in the desert sometimes, and then not being in the desert, and then being in the desert sometimes, and not being in the desert, being in the desert sometimes, not being in the desert. And through that, my faith has grown. And I told you today that I feel like the next 10 years of my life, and I know I'm dragging on, we're past overtime. We're in overtime now. That like I want to have impact, not me directly, but for God to help people. I want to do more in the next 10 years than I've done my whole life. And I don't think I could have I don't think I could have that mindset unless I had this like feeling like I was on the low ground and not on the high ground. And now I feel like I'm on the high ground. And I know that's more of a military, but I learned that in Gettysburg. But I feel like I've spent most of my life on the low ground fighting a battle. And now I feel like I'm finally, okay, I'm on the high ground. I can do some stuff here and help people in all sorts of different types of ways, whether it's technology or just one-on-one or whatever. That's what I'm committed to is in this next chapter.
That's a great story, and I appreciate you sharing that. I know that it's not easy sometimes digging deep and being able to be able to tell people your experience, but knowing that experience is going to help them, which is awesome. Always remember, you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to face this world by yourself. God's there; He's available. Email us, text us if you want to. It's great. Whatever reach out you have. Again, thank you, Charlie. I appreciate you, man. You're an awesome guy.
God bless you, my friend. God bless you all. Thank you for joining.
Have a great one, man. Thank you. Well, that's the end of that podcast. You don't have to do this by yourself. And I appreciate Charlie for being here. And that's not easy to do. And I appreciate him opening his heart up to you. And I hope you have an awesome day today and take care of yourself. And 3, 2, 1.